Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. The other day I played against this deck and it looked really cool and I wanted to try and play it myself, so I managed to find a list. I think it was Flost who was the player who played it, and here we are. So this is an interesting take on this sort of Cradle control space here. We're going a lot heavier into lands, which is somewhere where I feel a bit more comfortable generally speaking. And what this deck is aiming to do is leverage landfall triggers basically, and committing crimes and that sort of jazz. So we have Iridescent Vinelasher. So this is whenever a land you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to target opponent. We can offspring this, which is kind of like Kicker, where we can pay it once and we get a 1/1 copy of this. So we do this every time we get a land into play, we get to ping our opponent for 1. Okay, that's reasonable. But then if we're pinging our opponent for 1, that is committing a crime, which will then trigger our Freestrider Lookout. So then look in our library to find another land in the top 5. Put that in, which will then trigger this. Obviously, they can't just keep triggering each other because this is set to once per turn. But we still get to do a nice extra bit of pinging and finding some really nice lands. And obviously, we've got a pretty strong suite of utility lands. So this is our pile of like mana-producing lands, including a Surveil land. Then we've got Maze of Ith, we've got Talon Gates, Dryad Arbor, a nice Urza Saga here with a modest package, I would say. Then we got 4 wastelands, obviously, Boseiju and a Bojuka Bog, so we can attack from various axes there. We got Expedition Map, Lavaspur Boots, and Shadowspear for our bits to go with our Saga, which is plenty. And we've also got some other stuff that's going to want us to have more lands in play. So things like Springheart Nantuko, we keep making lands, and that's pretty good. And what you can do with this is you can put it on top of your Iridescent Vinelasher. So every time you play a land, you pay 2 and get another Iridescent Vinelasher. And you can see how that's going to snowball out of control, really quickly when you start playing these together. Then we just have the classic things. So Wight of the Reliquary, this allows us to sack our little tokens to go and find the lands we need at certain times, and Elvish Reclaimer, which again lets us find whatever land we need at a time. And then we just got some Fatal Pushes and Life from the Loams to round it out, so we can kind of get our card advantage from the Loams and deal with Psychic Frogs or other problem permanents with the Fatal Push. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the main deck. It looks pretty sweet and really clean, so I'm excited to give this a go. It absolutely smashed me when I played against it, so I'm looking forward to seeing how it fares. Inside we've got a couple of Urza Saga targets, so a Haywire Mite to blow up some problem permanents, and a Scrabbling Claws. The reason for Scrabbling Claws is it says target player exiles a card from their graveyard. So this plus Freestrider Lookout is a bit of a combo, as well as just being some relatively good graveyard hate. We got some Surgicals to do the same sort of thing, but this works on turn 0. We've got ourselves a couple of Dismembers if we need additional creature removal, Thoughtseize to attack our opponent's hand, some Bowmasters here in case we need to mess with people who are drawing lots of cards and that sort of jam. And a couple of Endurance for a bit more graveyard hate. There's also just another beta we can have. And it's very good in fair matchups like Delver. And yeah, that's pretty much the list. I'm very excited to play this one. I do like this creature quite a lot. I have a deck list of my own I'm working on with this that is not quite ready to be shown on the channel. But we're going to play this one and it should be a good learning experience and see what works and what doesn't. So yeah, that's about it. So like and subscribe and let's get Vine Lashing. When we're on the play, we can begin with an Elvish Reclaimer, which is a pretty strong way to start out a game of Magic the Gathering, so I'm going to keep this one. It does get a little bit awkward if we want to activate it, because we have to use our wasteland if we want to activate it straight away, but we're probably going to be looking at putting a Springheart Nantuko into play on 2, unless we need to Fatal Push, which gives us a nice slot to Fatal Push and then play the Underground Mortuary on the same turn cycle with mana efficient. So we can kind of weave in our 1 mana spell on our turn 2 without actually really missing out on anything. Bayou, Elvish Reclaimer, and pass. Polluted Delta from our opponent. That can mean a whole selection of things. I'm just going to play this Wasteland, and I'm going to hold up the Bojuka Bog. So our opponent could just end a step Entomb and reanimate like an Archon of Cruelty, and then we're probably losing that game. This way it gives us the flexibility to play around whatever they're doing. If they don't do anything, we can always just go and cycle away something with our Reclaimer, probably this Wasteland. If they do something that we need to interact with, then we can obviously interact with the Fatal Push or the Reclaimer. We already have the Maze of Ith to go with and deal with the Troll of Khazad-dûm. A Reanimate. Is this where I want to spend my mana? I think it's just safe for doing this. If we get hit by a Stifle here, I'm going to feel pretty bad. We did not get hit by a Stifle. So let's take out their graveyard. Fizzle the Reanimate. And our opponent's probably going to follow up with something like a Ponder, I would imagine. Could see a Tamiyo. This feels like the Re-Scaminator deck, which I think there was a video of yesterday on the channel for you lovely people. So now we have a choice about what we do with this Springheart Nantuko. So we can play this a round of days or not. If this doesn't resolve, how bad is the situation for us? It's certainly not great. So we have to give up quite a lot to play this around a daze, and is that worth it? We only have one Surveil land, so we can't even follow up. Alright, I'm going to go for the Bestow here. If this works, it's great. If they daze us, that is annoying. But I think the fact that if this works, we get to push really far ahead, otherwise we just get to make it... Yeah, okay, so it's a Force of Will. That was going to catch it either way, that's fine. I think we want to get our Underground Mortuary out now. I'll put that on top. This is the time to get 1 point of damage in with our Elvish Reclaimer. It's not much, but every point of damage we can do makes their reanimates potentially worse. So next turn we get to play the Springheart Nantuko around a daze, and we can make a copy of Elvish Reclaimer if we want, which is certainly better than a 1/1 insect, that's for sure. Psychic Fog. So this means we probably have to fire off the Fatal Push. Our opponent's got 3 cards in hand. They didn't have a daze before, so I'm not expecting a daze now. They might have a Force of Will, which means we want to start off with this Fatal Push. Let's see if they've got anything to defend this frog with. They do not. They did not have a daze last time. Am I expecting them to have a daze this time? I don't think so. So we play out our Wooded Foothills. That gets us a token. We only have 2 lands in graveyard right now. So I think we're better off cracking this next turn and making an Elvish Reclaimer token. Because if we crack this now, it doesn't actually get us towards making this a 3/4 right now. And this way we can hold up a Fatal Push if that's the thing we desperately need at any moment. And we're in a relatively stable spot, but things can certainly go awry quite quickly given Entomb Reanimate in our opponent's deck. Right, there's a Wasteland. That's a very precarious thing for our opponent to use because it gives us 3/4 Reclaimers. They can't take us off colours either, so I doubt they're going to use that for anything other than mana. A Brazen Borrower. Would I like to have a 1/1 now? It doesn't really matter, does it? The Bestow becomes a creature. So now we are incentivized to grab this Wooded Foothills. This does take us off of Revolt. I will get a Dryad Arbor here, and this gives us slightly more power in play, reducing our opponent's life total, making things like Reanimate worse. If our opponent has an Orcish Bowmasters, it's obviously not great for us. But I think they might have fired it off before if they had one. Let's crack this. Right, they didn't have anything there. Pretty sizable attack there. I'm not expecting anything like sweepers from our opponent's deck, so we're happy just to jam this lovely little Reclaimer, who is going to be a 3-power creature. I haven't done any of the cool like land shenanigans stuff that we have in our deck, but Springheart Nantuko is quite the Magic the Gathering card. Somewhat overshadowed by some of the really broken stuff in Modern Horizons. This card is right at the top of power level, in my opinion. It's good stuff. Being able to clone stuff is sweet. Alright, so this is a matchup where we would like some Graveyard Hate that is also just good against fair stuff, so I think that is pretty good. Scrabbling Claws is fine. I don't hate that. Orcish Bowmasters looks reasonable here. I don't hate Thought Seizers either. I don't like Dismember because it doesn't really kill the frog. Surgical Extraction does stop their worst graveyard stuff, but they're probably going to pivot off of it, especially since we have main deck Graveyard Hate anyway. So then it's a case of, do we want Lavaspur Boots and Shadowspear? Do we need both of those? Uncertain. Definitely want to keep our Fatal Pushes. Are we doing Life from the Loam stuff? And this is the tricky part. We have to work out what we are sideboarding out. The Shadowspear is probably a little bit better than the Lavaspur Boots because we might be needing some life gain here. So I think I'm going to go for having that. Although this Lavaspur Boots is so good with these creatures that tap to find stuff. Oh, the deck's too good. That's the problem. Like, it's probably these that should go. These are probably the weak link here. They're obviously fine, and we do want to play them. But, you know, I think if we trim a couple of those for endurances, that does look a little bit stronger to me. And then, does this make our White to the Reliquary slightly weaker? Like, we don't want to board out all of our action either. I guess replacing these with Bowmasters makes sense. It's not exciting, but it does make sense. And then, kind of like trimming a Mox Diamond for Scrabbling Claws. I don't think we can fit the Thought Seizers in here. We'll save these for like combo matchups. Obviously our opponent does have a slight combo element, but I'm expecting our opponent to board out of some of that stuff. Now we boarded out one of our Mox Diamonds and we've drawn the double Mox Diamond hand with only one land. Let's mulligan this. This Freestrider Lookout has to be very good in order for this hand to be keepable. We get one Surveil, one Wasteland. So we've kind of got like 3-ish spells. Talon Gate's kind of like a spell, but also not quite like a spell. I don't think I want to go lower than 6 cards though. And this is a tough call. I think we're going to keep... We can always go and fetch a Dryad Arbor as well and kind of give us a few more pseudo spells here. Right, no turn 1 play from our opponent. There is a distinct possibility that our opponent goes for some kind of Harbinger of the Seas line, which makes me want to get a basic forest with our second fetch land. We can now deploy the white on turn 2. If we want to play around days, we have to wait another turn, but we'll see what our opponent does. Right, we just got an Entomb Reanimate, so our opponent is on that plan still. I was imagining that they would go down on that particular plan. Unfortunately, not the case. So we're probably seeing this Atraxa hit play this turn. Yeah, it's kind of like a weird next leveling thing, because against a green deck like this, you would expect to go a lot slimmer on the graveyard plan. But then they know that we know that, so maybe they're going for the next level on top of that. Quite a lot of stuff for them to get over there. I have to imagine they're going for this Psychic Frog. I'm pretty cold to this Atraxa, to be honest. We do have Maze of Ith, which can beat it back. So Psychic Frog, Animate Dead, Underground Sea, and Daze. See if we can find a little bit of help. Like a Maze of Ith gives us some ability here. Don't need this Wasteland. So we know they have a Daze, so our White of the Reliquary will not be doing anything. An Elvish Reclaimer we can play around a Daze. We can play this so we can go and get Forest. It does give us a route out of this game with the Maze of Ith, but if they reanimate the Troll as well, we just don't have the removal spells to keep up with that. Let's get back for 7 here. We do have a 3/4. That's not nothing. We can crack this land whenever we need it. There's a Psychic Frog that we knew was coming. I will go for the very marginal thinning opportunity here. We don't have another Surveil land, otherwise I grab it here. We're just going to get this basic forest. So we have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So our opponent can kill us if they want to. Which means we probably have to Talon Gates with our Reclaimer. Which is not ideal, is it? Play a Wasteland and pass. So we have to phase out the Atraxa, I think. But then that takes us further away from doing Maze of Ith. But we can see what our opponent does in terms of pitching cards here. We might phase out the Psychic Frog, because that stops our opponent getting another card. It's currently 8 damage coming our way. This is 9 damage. This is 10 damage. This is 11 damage. So now we have to act. So we have to get the Talon Gates here, because it comes in tapped. We'll phase out... Is it phasing out the Frog? If we take 4, we can phase... We can... I think we just have to preserve our life total here, as much as I hate that. This means we can get a Psychic Frog dead off of a Fatal Push. So we can draw a Fatal Push, and then still die to this. We know they've got a Daze in hand, so we're very unlikely to be able to deploy any of our threats here. We do have a Reach threat, but we can play that around a Daze, but then we're still dead. Right, and now they've got another threat. So we definitely should have gone harder into the old anti-graveyard stuff. But you live and learn. I was expecting our opponent to board out a decent chunk of that. Does this do anything for us? We could play a land, pay 4 mana to put his Talon Gates in, but we're just dead to so many things. So very many things. I guess we should be boarding in these Surgicals. I don't think we need to come blisteringly fast out the gate with a Mox Diamond, so I have a Surgical over that. Maybe we're trimming on like a white. Maybe it is. Lavaspur Boots, we just have to try and keep our opponent a bit more honest here. I don't think it's worth trying to have Thought Seizers here to break up our opponent's hand. We should be able to beat their fair game plan relatively effectively with the tools in our deck. All in all, a Grief Ban was not enough to keep this deck in check. No green mana is definitely a no-no from me, so let's send this one back. I want to keep this. What are we getting rid of here? I want to keep the Graveyard Hate. We could just go slower and get rid of the Mox Diamond. I think that's probably the way to do. We don't want to be doing more card disadvantage than we need. I will start with just the Wasteland here, because I don't want to get Wastelanded off our only green source and our only black source. I'm going to see for my opponent. Now we can obviously just blow this up whenever we want, but I would like to get something in play. Alright, so we've drawn a land here. If we play this, we're not really doing anything for the turn. I think I'll play this Bayou out with the intention of doing an Orcish Bowmasters. This way we can pay around a Daze here as well. We can pay around double Daze. So is this end of turn Entomb? It's just Swamp Cycling a Troll. That's not so bad for us. The other option we had there was just to wasteland our opponent and then hold up this Bayou. 2 mana. This is going to be an Animate Dead. A Psychic Frog, you say. Understandable. Let's see if we can get some interaction out from our opponent here. We're taking the more mana efficient play. Another Fatal Push. We can stop them having days if we want to. So we play this one out. Then we take out their Underground Sea. And we'll Fatal Push this now. And see if we can get an attack in. We can get an attack in. Excellent. We don't need to have surgically extract the frogs because we have the Fatal Push to cover the next frog. So cantrips are bad for our opponent. Reanimation spells in theory are bad because we can surgically extract her out of days. Let's see what our opponent's up to. There is the Animate Dead. Let's say no to this. Pain 2 life. Got any interaction there, opponent? Has to be good interaction. Alright, their hand is kind of scary, if I'm being honest. Because they have Entomb Reanimate, or Entomb Animate Dead on the way. And that's going to arrive before we get to do... Well, if they find an untapped land, it's going to arrive before we get to get our Graveyard Hate out. So, are we bestowing this on an Orcish Bowmasters? That doesn't seem like a terrible plan. The other option is to Life from the Loam and get back our Wasteland. But our Wasteland doesn't do anything here. But we are going to be out of lands in the very near future. Tough call. I think I want to bestow this and just crash for 3. It's awkward. We just need them to brick for a turn on an untapped land. So next time we can float mana off the Saga and then cast the Life from the Loam, getting back Saga and Wasteland. So we push them for a little bit more damage. We've got some Graveyard Hate coming next turn, so we just need to dodge this one turn. No untapped land, please. I think this is the entire game hinges on this draw from our opponent. I'm liking this pause. Yeah, okay. We might be alright. Now, if they've drawn... I guess they can't even draw a Reanimate for much use here. They put in 2 into their graveyard. Alright, we managed to get there. Our opponent has 1 mystery card in hand, so that could be like a Stifle, and that would be really annoying for us. Right, let's get this Scrabbling Claws. And then we will Life from the Loam, targeting these 2 lands. A Daze here is not the worst, because we kind of need this untapped source to activate our Scrabbling Claws. A Fatal Push on our Orcish Bowmasters. Sure. That's not the end of the world. Okay, so we're in now. So we play this. I'm just trying to think. So we know all but 1 card in our opponent's hand. If we Bojuka Bog, we can just tap the Scrabbling Claws to take out 1 card from their graveyard, but that would just be the Entomb that goes. So that doesn't work. So we do need to play a colorless source, or something that's going to give us the mana here to activate the Scrabbling Claws. Crash for 2. We might even be making some construct tokens next turn. We'll see. So this is target card and target card. Draw a card. So they got a blue source that they were trying to put in. So, okay, it's a Psychic Frog. That's fine. And the land. So we have Entomb Reanimate, or Entomb Animate Dead as things our opponent gets to do. You can exile a card from your graveyard, opponent. I'm not going to dredge Life from the Loam right now. Our mana's kind of spoken for in a lot of ways. So step 1 is we cast Fatal Push on this creature. Step 2, we play a land. Are we playing a Wasteland or are we playing a Bojuka Bog? I quite like the Bojuka Bog here, just to keep our opponent's graveyard under wraps. It gets our tap land out of the way as well. They do have 2 Entombs, which is certainly not nothing. I imagine we're seeing an Undercity Sewers here. No. We're just going to cast 2 Entombs. There's the first. So where this backfires for us is if our opponent has a Wasteland. So maybe we're supposed to play the Wasteland instead. But our opponent's deck probably has 2 to 3 Wastelands. Animate Dead targeting our Orcish Bowmasters. This is not a tap and sacrifice, it's just a sacrifice. Counter spell, we can counter that. Animate Dead. They have another Animate Dead, we can pop this off. They got 1 card in hand. Alright, they've had enough and we've got the match. We didn't get to do any of our cool landfall stuff. Just good old fashioned, good honest, green-black, almost rocky type approach where we're just making some guys, disrupting our opponent. Alright, let's go to round 2. Our opening hand is Surveil Land into Springheart or Wight. That's fine. We can go Wight, and then the next time we can go Springheart Land, sack something for Wight. That seems relatively solid. We are on the draw though, so this might be a little bit slow, but we are playing a non-blue deck, so we're unlikely to be blisteringly fast. Okay, we might be Wastelanding on turn 1 instead here. Sign me right up for that Wasteland. We can't play anything off this Mox Diamond, so I'm not going to use it yet. We can make a White of the Reliquary next turn. Probably getting rid of this Bojuka Bog, given what I've seen so far. Nothing. That was very suspicious. Is our opponent like a Saga Storm style deck list. That's the sort of deck that might keep an Urza Saga and nothing else, maybe. Okay, let's play a Mox Diamond. Let's get rid of this Bojuka Bog. Let's play out a Wight of the Reliquary, and then next turn we can make 2 tokens off of our Springheart Nantuko. Now we can put the Springheart Nantuko on the Wight of the Reliquary, so if we get some more mana later on, we can start making more Wights. And that's going to be a pretty good way to go. I do think our opponent has to be somewhere on the combo spectrum to have kept this hand. And they didn't actually cast anything off of there as a Saga on turn 1. So maybe they were just like, okay, this is a 3-turn route to Lionside Diamond. Right, let's bestow this on this little friend here. Play land. Just going to tax. So this gets pumped for creatures in your graveyard. So there's no way we can increase the number of creatures unless we go and get a Dryad Arbor here. But I don't think that's what I want to do. So because that's Vigilance, we can sack this insect token as we say please. We'll see what our opponent gets this turn, if anything. See what they discard. They might scoop the game up rather than discard something. A Lotus Petal. So I was correct on the old combo front there. I will go and get Dryad Arbor here because that just adds damage to what we're doing. I feel we need to get this game won before our opponent breaks out of whatever's going on over there. I think it's better to sacrifice this Arbor than it is an insect token. But if we're going to play another spell, we want to sacrifice the insect token because Dryad Arbor is mana. So what am I looking for here? We could go and get our own as a Saga. And try and work on that line. I don't hate that one. We could get Cradle. And just generate loads of mana. That doesn't seem the worst, does it? Let's go. I think we attack with everything here. Let's get that damages in. Now, I think we sack this insect. And we go and get probably an Urza Saga here. I don't think we're going to copy the white here. I think one's Freestrider Lookout. So we'll play the Lookout. Is it worth playing the map, or should we just play another Lookout? I think we just play more guys here. This just gives us lethal next turn. We're not going to die to the Slick Shot Show-Off because we have Reach Creatures, which is a card that some people are playing as a thing that you get to jump at people and just make it really large. We played that deck a week or so ago and it was really fun. All right. They've had enough, but they've shown us enough that I know roughly what our opponent is up to. This is very much a deck where I would like to have access to Orcish Bowmasters and Thoughtseizers. Our opponent probably has Orcish Bowmasters of their very own. I would also like this Haywire Mite. I don't think we need the Shadowspear, but we might need the Lavaspur Boots to get that extra damage in. I don't think the Surgical Extraction is good because every time that they go and put the Echo into their graveyard, they're immediately going to cast it, so it's not going to do very much. This is not really a fatal push game. We don't have Collector Roof type shenanigans. We might be able to do like Life from Loam, setting up a lock where we just constantly Boseiju them, and that's not the worst. I do not believe we need a Maze of Ith. Wastelands are pretty good here. Talon Gates, less so. So we can strip out one of those, and that takes us to around 61. And yes, this deck list is 61, which is not uncommon when you've got lots of tutors in decks to see them like getting that one extra slot. Yes, the math is slightly different on your opening hands, but having access to that one slot is pretty handy. Do I want a Scrabbling Claws? I don't believe so. If our opponent is on Gaea's Will lines, then we will want more Graveyard Hate, but we want the big Graveyard Hate, so we want some Endurances. Which means we're probably looking at trimming a Loam and one of these Vinelashes. We probably should be more Vinelashes, but I want to see how they play a little bit. They seem very good in the grindy fair matchups. Alright, Thoughtseize into Springheart with a Wasteland to back it up. That all seems reasonable. Like, we're not going to get much better than this given the nature of our deck into our opponents. I think we are definitely on the weakest side of this matchup. Soporific Springs. Mox Opal. Urza's Bauble. Lotus Petal. Alright, our opponent's got Metalcraft now. Is it more important to hit our opponent's land or to hit their hand? I think the answer to that one is very much hitting their hand. Especially since we can do it twice next turn. Or, well, we can do it again next turn. What is your payoff that you have in hand? The One Ring. Get out of here. That's a pretty good payoff, isn't it? So next time we have a choice of doing Thoughtseize or just trying to get a threat on board. So our opponent might be repealing their own Mox Opal here. So they tap it for mana, repeal it, replay it. Right, they're Baubbling before even tapping this Mox Opal. Interesting. There's an Otawara. And a Grim Monolith. So they can just repeal our Springheart Nantuko. Okay. don't mind playing out this Reclaimer. And then, is it worth wastelanding my opponent here? I think it is. We'll take out the non-legendary one. So if they draw another Otawara, it's a Lotus Petal instead of an actual land. So on their turn, they can just pay to repeal our Reclaimer, but they're not doing anything at that point. Or they're less likely to be doing anything. And maybe we get to snag the card they draw off the repeal. 4 mana. They find the ring? Or is this going to be a repeal with mana floating? That's kind of a risky proposition. Transmute Artifact. Yep, that's a good one. So they can go and get the 1 ring here. There it is. So we can't Thoughtseize our opponent anymore. We don't have any big haymakers like Collector Reef. Yeah, I think our opponents can just happily win this game from this point. I'll play this. Get rid of this Talon Gates, I think. I'm going to bestow this on this creature. Play a land. We can't Thoughtseize our opponent because of the 1 ring. I'm going to crack this. That puts a 3rd land in our graveyard. We can go and get the Surveil land here. Not that I'm expecting to be able to surveil into anything particularly useful. This is a lot of damage, to be honest. I don't think anything we have in our deck is enough. Which is a bit of a sorry state of affairs. But this is what we've got. So next turn we have Thoughtseize, Springheart Nantuko, make a bunch of guys, and hopefully try and pressure our opponent. They can lose this Lotus Petal to repeal our Reclaimer. Alright, so in comes a Reclaimer. Get 4 damage across. 5-turn clock, but obviously it's going to be less than that if we have our insects, but our opponent's probably going to have something to say about that. And they're also going to be taking damage from the 1 ring, which is not nothing. They can make some pretty large Saga tokens. So Saga tokens are going to be 4/4s, but they don't really want to be doing Saga tokens. They want to be doing all the busted stuff they have in their deck. Alright, so they have a repeal here, so they can just repeal their own Mox Diamond, and that's probably game over. I'm not going to make them play it out, but they're basically going to draw through the whole deck here. Yeah, we don't have very good tools for this matchup, sadly. So I think we just have to hope for the best. Do I want another Iridescent Vinelasher just to try and threaten our opponent a little bit? Showing us that they're not actually doing the graveyard stuff, so I don't think we need these endurances. Which means maybe we'll take a Surgical Extraction as like a one-of. Maybe we can snag something and take out their hand. That's not a great way to play the game, but we don't have any of the classic green haymakers that we would want. Wight of the Reliquary into stuff. This is just too slow. Everything we have is too slow. We need our Thoughtseizers, really. Okay, Haywire Mite, we can keep this. So I think we get rid of the Mox Diamond. We don't really want to be doing Mox Diamond things, I don't think. So I'm going to play out the Bayou first and play out the Elvish Reclaimer first, because that way they won't see the Haywire Mite coming and we might be able to get some sweet action out of it. So you can play and pop it in the same turn and it might surprise our opponent, and their whole game plan might hinge on, you know, playing the 1 ring out. And because Haywire Mite exiles, it gets to actually deal with the 1 ring. A Pithy Needle wouldn't be the worst to have access to in our deck because we are a Saga deck. It does feel like a slight weakness in our list. But as I always say, you can't be everything. Okay, they're an Emery deck as well. We just brought out some of our great deck. Now we do have Bojuka Bog that we can still reach for. Manifold Key is fine. Pithy Needle is pretty good here. Obviously they have the ability to just draw a bunch of cards and just draw extra cards every turn. An Ancient Tomb. Understood. Yep, our opponent gets to draw some additional cards. So we're probably looking at fetching up the Bojuka Bog to deal with our opponent's graveyard in response to an Emery trigger. Am I playing the Talon Gates now? I don't think so. I think we just play out the Verdant Catacombs here. And I'll crack this now so there's no weird timings about when we try and do anything. And I think we just get a Forest. I don't believe our opponent's playing anything, but you never know these days. Like, we're going to turn it into a Bojuka Bog anyway, which doesn't really matter. Right, let's get all these things out of their graveyard. So Emery is off now until they find another artifact. So not a bad turn for us. Maybe they were hoping that this Emery would go all the way for them. We don't have anything like an Echoing Deeps to rebuy this Bojuka Bog play. I think we are just sending in with the Reclaimer here. Is that true? Am I expecting Hull Breacher out of our opponent? I don't think so. Why would you board in Hull Breacher against the green-black deck? Play Wight of the Reliquary. And I will play this Haywire Mite. Next turn we can phase out our opponent's Emery and just swing through. Dismember on the Haywire Mite. If you life, that's not going to be relevant at all. I guess maybe we get into some weird Urza Saga type thing. But if they're hitting our Haywire Mite, that's probably not what they're going for. the One Ring. Yep, that's a good one. There's a danger of playing out the Haywire Mite then for mana efficiency. This Mox Diamond is terrible. Does this Talon Gates do anything for us? Not really. Is it better to play this Talon Gates or this Mox Diamond? Mox Diamond directly puts a card into our graveyard. Right, I'm down to do that. So the plan here is we activate our Elvish Reclaimer. We can go and get a Dryad Arbor if we wish, and then we can turn that into anything we want with the Wight of the Reliquary. And that gives us a reasonable amount of beatdown, but I don't think it's going to be enough to beat what our opponent's up to. Now, we're not a Green Sun Zenith deck, so if we were going to play some Collectories, we'd have to run like 3 or so of them in the board. Another copy of the One Ring, you say? Okay. They're keeping the new one. That's interesting to me. I think I just want to keep the one with the most counters on so I can just draw more cards. Right, there's a Saga. We can wasteland that. Haywire Mite. Sure, you can blow up my Mox Diamond. I don't particularly care about that one. Right, let's get rid of this Bojuka Bog. Let's Dryad Arbor. Let's go to Dryad Arbor, which pumps our Knight. Go and get a Wasteland or an Urza Saga of our own. It's probably the Wasteland. Going to blow up our Mox. They are. That's fine. I don't really care about that at this point. Take our opponent's Saga and we'll make our own Saga. There's no point attacking because I have One Ring protection. So we can go and find another Wasteland. We can get Cradle if we need to jump up in mana. Right, let's just draw in more cards. We can go get Talon Gates here and bash for 7. Ah, yes, they have looping One Rings. How do we get around the looping One Ring problem? How do we get around the looping One Ring problem? Life from the Loam, I guess. Don't really have much in the way of being able to kill the Emery. Yeah, this situation is not good for us. I guess your Orcish Bowmasters is fine here as well. I'm not really convinced that getting another Wasteland here is going to help. Probably just getting a Cradle. Or is it the Underground Mortuary so we can dig towards something better? Like, what does the Springheart Nantuko actually do for us? It's not the card we need. It does pump our Knights, our Wight, sorry, but we need like a land that says damage can't be prevented on it. Our opponent can just cycle the One Rings over and over again, and they've kind of got us in a bit of a lock here. Now we can go and get our Bojuka Bog back using a Life from the Loam, and that is okay. Because of the way phasing works, there's no time we can stop them being able to do this using Talon Gates. Because it comes back in their untap step, and then if we hit it at any point, they just tap it. Paradoxical outcome. Yep. You can draw a bunch more cards. This also gives them the ability to reset the One Ring if that's the thing they want to do. They haven't used their Emery yet. Our opponents should just comfortably be able to win here. A Grim Monolith. Yep, playing out a bunch of stuff again. We don't even have anything like a Force of Vigor to try and attack our opponent's deck. We're very underprepared for what our opponent's doing. Alright, they get to draw a bunch more cards again. 19 cards in hand, 19 cards in library. Grim Monolith into Grim Monolith into Mox Opal. I'm just going to cut to when something interesting happens here. Oh, okay. Paradox Engine was the first thing that happened, and that is pretty interesting. So now they can draw their whole deck, and we don't need to keep playing this game. Because we know they've got a One Ring in hand. Yep, a difficult matchup, that one. I don't think we're ever going to beat it with our configuration at the end of the day. Let's go to round 3. Sure, this hand is fine. We get to Reclaimer into some Wastelands. Probably fetching basic Forest, I would imagine, here. Or we lead off on the Bayou. But if we do the fetching, we get to make this potentially a 3-drop on turn 3. Sorry, 3-power guy on turn 3. Alternatively, we can save this and get more use out of our Springheart Nantuko. I'm going to save and get more out of our Springheart Nantuko here. Just worth a days for your opponent? It is. Alright, so our opponent is some kind of Ponder, Brainstorm, Force of Will deck with Underground Seas. That doesn't really narrow it down. Could be Rescaminator. Could be like Bug Beanstalk. Thoughtseize. Okay, they're probably going to take our Reclaimer or our Fatal Push, depending on if they're going to be playing Frog or if they're going to be trying to do graveyard stuff. Right, they're going to be doing graveyard stuff, so I'm pretty sure our opponent is Rescaminator now. I guess we're Wastelanding. Try and slow our opponent's roll so it's going to be more difficult for them to Entomb and Animate Dead in the same turn cycle. They might be able to Entomb Reanimate, and that's just going to get us, and we have to accept that. Basic Island. Blue Urns. Wight of the Reliquary. Is this one worth smashing into play right now? Into a daze? I think so. Actually, do I? I'm kind of worried about our opponent being able to do graveyard shenanigans. So I think we want to get the card in play that plays around that. Due to the other land we have, I'm going to go get another Bayou. So we need to have access to a Bojuka Bog somewhere soon. Alright, so we're in. It's killable with a fatal push here. They did not have a fatal push. Alright, so if we get another turn, we should be able to put a creature into play. And that might be enough to stop any of the graveyard stuff for a little while. So this is a really clutch turn. Netherglyph. Okay, so it might just be the blue-black mid-rangey build, which is a very different beast. So the Graveyard Hate is useful, but it's not as essential. Psychic Frog. Alright, that is a thing I would very much like to spend my turn killing. Our opponent has one card in hand. So they can daze us, but they can't Force of Will us. So this is an easy kill this. They get 4/5. We get a 5/5 if they have one card in hand. It's a daze, that's going to be a little bit annoying for us. But they could have dazed the Wight of the Reliquary. So we have a 5/5. Does our opponent have a way of making this Netherglyph bigger? I don't think they do. And then next turn, we can attack, make a guy, go and get a Bojuka Bog, and then lock this game out. If they attack here, I will not block. That's some shenanigans right there. There's no need for us to make that potential trade. Well, it won't be a trade. They'll either kill our guy or we'll kill theirs. There's no need for it. Let's get this on the go. There's another Wight of the Reliquary. Smash this out. Intuition. Wasn't expecting that one. Our opponent's on something a bit wild over there. Is this new tech I'm not familiar with just yet? We will find out. If they're doing graveyard stuff, that doesn't matter because we have the Bojuka Bog ready to go. Savine's Reclamation and 2 Teferi Time Ravelers. You can have a Savine's Reclamation because we have Bojuka Bog ready to go. And you have no white mana. I'm going to crack this now for the purposes of timings. We'll get another Bayou here. Make another friend. We'll bash for a lot. So we have the Savine's Rec covered with the Bojuka Bog in our deck anyway. I'm going to play a White Source and Savine's Rec. We can counterspell that with it. Yeah, okay. We just kind of rolled through what our opponent was doing. This is a matchup where I'd like some fair Graveyard Hate, but I don't want the unfair Graveyard Hate in Surgicals. I think the Bowmasters look fine here. How much into creatures is our opponent? Like we've seen the Psychic Frog, which doesn't die to Dismember. But we've seen Netherglyph, which quite often does. We've also got Teferi to think about, which is where our Bowmasters come in. Do I like having Dismembers? I don't think I want to board in that many additional things. I think in a matchup with Teferis, I want to go lower on Mox Diamonds. Doesn't feel like we need to go blazingly fast here. And maybe Iridescent Vinelasher is actually okay here. Because we get to mess with our opponent's life total and just constantly put pressure on, which is the sort of thing we want to do in this kind of matchup. We're trimming out one of these loams, perhaps. We definitely need to keep in all our pushes. One more cut. Is there one from our lands we can look at removing? Not really. I think all of these look pretty handy, which means we need to work out what goes here. Is it a Freestrider Lookout in exchange for an Endurance? I don't think so. I think the Freestrider Lookout is just good. We could even have a Scrabbling Claws just as an engine with our Freestrider Lookout, but I don't think that's worth doing. It would probably be an Iridescent Vinelasher. That's kind of the weak link in our deck a lot of the time. We haven't even got to see it in our opening hand yet, which is a shame. Maybe we'll draw one day. We have boarded them out a little bit, but we're trying not to. Well, 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 if it isn't our little friend. I'll keep this. Elvish Reclaimer is a pretty good Magic the Gathering card. So we could play Iridescent Vinelasher on 1, and then play the Reclaimer on 2 to play around daze, because if they daze our Vinelasher, that's not actually the end of the world. If we get stifled here, that's going to really annoy me. We didn't get stifled. I think I want to play out the Vinelasher here as kind of bait for the Reclaimer. It does mean our Reclaimer is going to be online a little bit later, but our opponent's holding up potentially daze and fatal push. I don't think we can afford to be walking into those with our better creature. Is this worth a removal spell to your opponent? I don't think it is. Alright, they didn't go for a removal spell. So it will do a decent amount of damage. It will actually clock our opponent in relatively good chunks. So we're going to be making land drops pretty much every turn, sometimes multiple. A Netherglyph. Landfall being one of my all-time favourite mechanics, I think. Love Threshold as well. Threshold's great. Okay, so we have a fatal push. I don't want to spend a fatal push on this. doesn't feel like an impressive thing to do. I want to play this around a daze. Do I want to wasteland our opponent right now? I don't think so. Which means I think the logical choice here is to play the Urza Saga and have that option. So now we get to play this Reclaimer around a daze. They can still just Fatal Push this, and we have to live with that. If they daze, it won't grow their Netherglyph because they already have an instant in their graveyard. We're still not attacking into a 1-2 because they can just crack that land and make it a 2-3. I'd rather save a Fatal Push for a good creature rather than this creature that we can deal with quite nicely with Graveyard Hate, which we have a nice chunk of. Getting a Surveil, maybe they can pump this to a 3-4. No, they left the card on top. That's kind of worse for us. We'll see. I don't really want to Fatal Push this Netherglyph, but it's a thing we might have to do at some stage. There's an artifact. Teferi Time Raveler. Yeah, it's pretty irritating. Goodbye, Elvish Reclaimer. There is another Netherglyph. So we do get to kill this Teferi if we want to play the Talon Gates here. I assume they're attacking with one and then blocking with the other. Okay, yeah. So we Talon Gates and then we just start activating our Urza Saga. I'm happy with this spot. Let's phase that one out. This only hits opponents. It doesn't deal with Planeswalkers. I'll play this one out. And I think it's going to be the Dryad Arbor here. And this finishes off the Teferi. And we're going to have a 2-2 that soon becomes much bigger. Our opponent's going to have a pretty solid turn. Otherwise they're going to be falling behind, I think, in this turn cycle. We get 2-2 that can attack as a 4-4. Possibly a 5-5 if you want to stick the equipment on it. We'll see what our opponent's up to. Another Teferi Time Raveler. What would you like to go for this time? Just the Reclaimer again, sure. They're really worried about Reclaimer getting a Bojuka Bog. I don't blame them. Oh, no attacks. We've gone on the ropes. Let's make a friend. Let's make another friend. If we get a Shadowspear here, how useful is that for us? If we get an Expedition map, we can just get the Bojuka Bog. We don't have the mana to get the Bojuka Bog right now, though. If we get the Shadowspear, we can equip it. It'll give us a 5-5, so they can trade one guy, and then they can just replay the guy. So that doesn't seem amazing to me. We get the Lavaspur Boots, we swing with two guys. It gives us hasty Reclaimers in future, which is something important to note. We're probably going to be wastelanding our opponent's white source here. I think it's the Lavaspur Boots. So we get this, we get to ping our opponent for one. We play the Reclaimer first. Take our opponent's only white source. And we'll pass. So next turn we can go and get the Bojuka Bog. Shrink both of our opponent's guys, mash with the team. If they have a way of bouncing our Reclaimer again, we can just play it with haste this time. And the little Vinelasher is doing some work. It's been good for 5 points of damage so far, something like that. 4 points of damage. 4 points, I think. Dark Ritual. Is this a Doomsday build? Intuition. My opponent loves their intuitions. Just some sort of Savine's Wreck pile again. Ah, it's the Demigod, isn't it? Now I remember. Lake of the Dead. I see. So now they bash us for a whole bunch. I played one of these Demigod builds on the channel a while ago. So our opponent's going to be attacking us with a bunch of stuff here. So we have to block some guys, otherwise we die. So we can double block this. And then we single block this, I think. This puts us to 1. At least we know what our opponent's doing a bit more now. And we do actually want the Surgicals. I thought they were just on some sort of slower fair pile. Kill this. Plays out one of these. We take 10. That's not good enough. We don't have any other useful tools in our deck here. Then we're just going to concede and go to game 3. Now we know what our opponent's doing. The Surgical Extractions are interesting because they obviously hit the Demigods, but if they've got a Teferi in play, they're not the best. But yeah, I still think we want them here. You know what I'm thinking about sideboarding out, don't you? It's these Vinelashers again, although they didn't look too bad here. Not really a fan of the Mox Diamonds. I understand how useful they are here. This is definitely a matchup where the Life from Loam can do some real work too. Our opponent's got cantrips, so we want these Bowmasters and stuff. Fetching the lands is good. Maybe we'll trim Expedition, one of those. Something like this. I really don't like Mox Diamond into Teferi. Okay, this hand is pretty good into Teferis. I'll keep it. Our opponent's definitely getting some value out of us not really knowing what they're doing, which is a very powerful thing that you can certainly exploit in Magic the Gathering. I usually like to be on the end of my opponent not knowing what I'm doing, or misinterpreting what you're doing for something else is always good. The Netherglyph does seem like a good fit in our opponent's deck, though, when they've got all these weird, janky, different permanent types. That is a Tamiyo. Let's get ourselves a bit of surveil action here. Is this a Wasteland time, or is this a Orcish Bowmasters time? Orcish Bowmasters, pretty poor against Tamiyo, as it turns out. If I Wasteland, our opponent just gets to keep doing Tamiyo stuff, but Wasteland is good against our opponent's deck. We definitely want this Wasteland. Are we playing it this turn? I don't know. So we can get this Bowmasters down right now. I quite like this little play, where we play this, we get rid of this Tamiyo. If they want to brainstorm in response, then we flash in the Bowmasters. They didn't want to brainstorm response. I'm just going to get one of these out ahead of our opponent doing any brainstorm stuff. So our opponent wants to brainstorm, it's going to cost them deep in the purse. And if they brainstorm on their turn, it means our ping triggers can kill the Tamiyo. Whereas if they do it in our turn, our triggers go on first. Alright, what are we going to see here? A Teferi Time Raveler. Bouncing the Bowmasters. Okay, that's definitely a thing I'm happy to then throw into play again. Take our opponent's blue source here. Got Force of Will this time? They do. Okay, well we have another Bowmasters for next turn. And our opponent might not expect it, so we might be able to actually get some work done here. Plussing of the Teferi. Alright, our opponent's got 4 spells in hand, by the sounds of things, because they didn't play a land out. Although once they have the Teferi, they didn't have to care about when they play their lands out. They can play it second main without any issue. Oh, Lake of the Dead. We're just drawing a clue here. Yikes. Would love to draw a Wasteland. Did not draw a Wasteland. I'll play out Urza's Saga here. I'll play this little friend. This is pretty backbreaking for our opponent here. Alright, they have another Force of Will. So we get to swing it to Teferi for 1. Next turn we can set up Freestrider Lookout and Maze of Ith. And that's pretty great. Right, they've got a land. And a Netherglyph, who is a 3-4. So we're not attacking the Teferi very easily right now. I think this Freestrider Lookout is better for us than the Maze of Ith. Oh, sorry, it's better for us than the Wight and the Reclaimer here. Because of our Maze of Ith. Boom. So if they attack us, we get to look at top 5 and put a land into play from, which is pretty gross. I won't lie to you. And a pretty gross way to play Magic the Gathering. Right, Teferi is getting to the point where it gets another bounce. We have a reach creature to wall the Tamiyo, and we have the maze to deal with the Netherglyph. Just a Tamiyo. Let's go for the block with our reach creature. If they're casting a Brainstorm here, we will then Maze of Ith this and get our free card. And maybe get a Talon Gates. Right, it's going to be drawing some clues here. Not Talon Gates. I do like the Wasteland a whole lot here. Like, there's a lot of Planeswalkers and stuff that we have to deal with now, which is certainly a pain. There are some Teferi options for our opponent here. They can get rid of their Teferi to bounce our guy. But shrinking our guys is certainly a real deal. We do get to take out our opponent's only land, though. And we have a Bojuka Bog. Wow. It's really coming up Millhouse right now. So, I think we go 1, 2. We'll make a guy this time. I think after last time, I just want to get the Shadowspear and be a bit safer with that. Play out this Bojuka Bog. Shred your graveyard. We get to commit a crime here. This attacks for 2. This attacks for 1. So we can attack for 2 on one of these if we care about that. Or we just get another Saga. I think just getting another Saga is better, isn't it? I would like to attack the Teferi here, I think. Right, just chucking the Netherglyph under the bus. In our opponent's upkeep, we will Wasteland this. Because that way we get another trigger off of our Freestrider Lookouts. Let's commit a crime. It does feel like a crime Wasteland. Your opponent's only land on turn 6 of the game. Gaia's Cradle, you say? Don't mind if I do. Right, we are doing it. I do like the Freestrider Lookout. It's 3 mana, which is a lot, and you kind of need something else to go with it. But it goes pretty hard once it gets going. I like it more than Tireless Tracker. And I do quite like Tireless Tracker. We found a mana source. It's a Brainstorm. Found another mana source. They can buy back the Brainstorm using Tamiyo, but they might be in a position where they have to minus the Tamiyo, plus the Tamiyo to try and keep their Planeswalkers alive. Our opponent has shown us a combo element to their deck. But where they're at the moment, they're not going to be able to easily do the whole intuition for Demigod, play Demigod plan. They would like to get rid of our Freestrider Lookout. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable. That card has been doing some absolute work. That also reduces our mana count off the Cradle. Plussing the Teferi. One card in hand. Plussing the Tamiyo, I have to imagine here, unless they're going to be getting back the Swords to Plowshares. If they get back Swords to Plowshares, we kill the Tamiyo. Right, they're plussing the Tamiyo to minus our creatures. Understood. We kind of like Lavaspur Boots more than this Shadowspear now. But it stops our opponent just being able to just whammo, blammo us. So this gets a new ability. I think we make this now because we're going to be tapping our Cradle anyway. Let's go and find another land here. Kind of diversifying our portfolio a little bit here. So go to tax. So we get to deal... Where do we want to go with this? I think we want to attack Teferi here. So we get 3 damage in the Teferi, so it doesn't get to bounce. Our opponent probably has to 2-stage their intuition plan. So I'm going to hold on to this endurance. We can't cast at instant speed because of their Teferi. Maybe we're supposed to play the Reclaimer there, just get extra bodies, but our opponent might have some sort of Wrath type thing going on. Next turn we do just get to go and find the Lavaspur Boots and go ham. Sure. So we need to deal with this Tamiyo, is what you're telling me. We've got our Lavaspur Boots now. 1, 2, 3, 4 creatures this taps for. We could make some copies of these things as well. But we don't have the land for that just yet. So I think we are on team equipping the boots to the construct. Playing out the white. Playing out the Reclaimer. Go into attacks. Okay, so this needs to go at Tamiyo. This needs to go at Tamiyo. This probably needs to go at Tamiyo as well. I think we're just sending it all at Tamiyo this time around. I don't know what interaction our opponent has here. They certainly don't have lands. They've got spells. Let's just make sure the Tamiyo doesn't get to stick around. Okay. Now we equip the Lavaspur Boots to our white of the Reliquary. Now we have instant speed, go and find a land. That should give our opponent some amount of pause. It's probably Talon Gates. Alright, our opponent's had enough and we managed to take the match. Bit of a grindy one. Power of Wastelands compels me and the Freestrider Lookout looked great there. Let's go to round 4. On the play for round 4, this hand is very all in on Life from the Loam finding us something. Don't get me wrong, it's a powerful engine. But our deck isn't leveraging it as well as other decks can. We're not like a full lands build. We haven't got, you know, like Thespin Stage combo to go to. And this is kind of already mulliganed because multiple loams aren't good. I'm going to just take the mulligan. There's some tools in this hand. Am I keeping Elvish Reclaimer and then a bunch of utility? I guess. We have a Reclaimer active on turn 2. We have Wasteland Shenanigans. I think I'll keep this. We're going to ping off the Bojuka Bog so we can go fetch it at instant speed with a Reclaimer. Our opponent's mulled to 5. Okay. Our opponent's mulled to 4. We might be getting bopped pretty hard this one. Alright, they scooped it up. I think our opponent is a combo deck. We're very bad against combo decks, and we're okay against the grindy fair deck, so I'm just going to play a load of anti-combo stuff. So basically all of these things. Now, we might be sideboarding completely wrong, but we have pretty good game against non-combo decks anyway. So we'll just kind of index into trying to beat the combo deck and see what happens. Freestrider Lookout is a little bit slow here. Take out one of those. Alright, we just got a whole bunch of stuff here. Alright, let's see how right or wrong we were with the read on our opponent. Mulligan into 4 and then scooping it up is an interesting one. Yep, I like this hand. We have a little bit of graveyard interaction. We have our best 1-drop. We have another 1-drop that I really like this guy. It's really cool. I don't think this is necessarily the best deck to leverage it. But it's a fine role player. But a lot of the time it's just getting replaced with more impactful cards in a matchup. Alright, opponent. You got 6 cards over there. A swamp. Not a fair start. A duress. Okay, so probably losing the surgical extraction, I would imagine here. There it goes. That does give me some information about what our opponent is up to. What our opponent is up to is probably trying to turn 1 us. Might as well get the forest here. Just in case our opponent has like a Blood Moon pivot. I'm imagining Black-Red Reanimator. That particular swamp part is just the vibes you see for Black-Red Reanimator players. When I briefly had Blackcrab Reanimator in paper, that was the swamp I used as well. So maybe that's some sort of personal bias. But these are the vibes I'm getting. Seen Duress, our opponent mulled to 4, looking for a hand that did something. Double swamp. Could be mono black Reanimator. Right, Doughty Voidwalker. And Orcish Bowmasters, you say. I will just sit here and am I looking at Reclaimering here? I would like to have the opportunity to Reclaimer. Even though whatever we sack goes into the void. Thought Seize. Would I like to take this opportunity to put an Orcish Bowmasters into play? I don't think I can, because our opponent could just go direct your into Reanimate and kill us. Just have to let them hit this. Whatever they get, they can put into the void. Alright, so they are the one with the Bowmasters now. Right, they do have fetch lands, so they are probably splashing another colour. They might be mono black, but just splashing for Surveil lands. Shouldred's Edict, you say. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature. Okay, let's go and get our Talon Gates of Madara here. That keeps our creature alive. Opponent's down to 1 card. Another Orcish Bowmasters isn't quite where I want to be. We have to hold this guy up, I think, still. I think I'm just going to use this opportunity to get the Dryad Arbor in. And then we can't attack for reasons mentioned before. We can always just go and get a Maze of Ith if we need to. We don't have any like Blaststone style things. Okay. We will sacrifice this Talon Gates of Madara. Guess what we're going to get? Oh no, we took out one of the Talon Gates of Madara, didn't we? We're just going to get this Saga. And get that ticking. Sure, we'll get the Saga ticking. Our opponent with 1 card in hand can't do any egregious graveyard stuff. Yep, you can bash, but we can just get... Did we take the Shadowspear out? I think we did. General combo plan. Yeah, we did take it out. But we can always get a Maze of Ith at some point with this. The Wasteland as well. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. Alright, deck. What are we doing? I think we are going for an Iridescent Vinelasher with Kicker. Or, sorry, with Offspring. It's 2 power on the board, which is the same as the Bowmasters, but this grows a lot more over time. Because we're now in a race. Maybe our opponent's just like mono black Scam, but without the grease now. I don't know. We'll see. We can play our own Haywire Mite and shoot it with our own Bowmasters. That's a thing we're allowed to do. Right, fetch lands are interesting here. And Endurance. That is a quite beefy boy. I will take my beefy boy, please. A Wasteland. Okay. In comes the Voidwalker. It looks like we're getting closer and closer to having to make that Haywire Mite play. Alright, let's make our beefy boy. Do I want to put these things into our opponent's deck? Not really. I'm going to take out our Dryad Arbor, sure. So we need to play this Haywire Mite. So next time we can Bowmasters ping our own Haywire Mite and swing the race. I can't remember if they've seen this Bowmaster in our hand. They certainly took an earlier Bowmaster at some point. They got access to. They got a Bowmaster they can get. A bunch of stuff. If we find a land, that also pings them for 2. But we have lethal here anyway. We just need to brick. Make sure our opponent bricks on whatever they have. Right, they got a spell. A Shouldred's Edict. Each opponent sacrifices a creature token. Well, we only have one of those. So we attack 5 here. Play our Wasteland. Get that ping off. And then we ping down our own Haywire Mite to gain 2 life. And we try and make our opponent attack first to try and get the game over and done with. To make sure they can't get anything out of it. That makes them survive another turn. Just how we drew it up, by mastering our own creature. How good is this Magic the Gathering game? Just as a game that exists. There's so much stuff. Like, you have what your cards are designed to do, but then there's so many little corner cases where you want to do other things with them. There's a reason this game is around for 3 decades, and it is glorious. Alright, so that's 4 rounds in the book. We are currently 3-1, so we might be able to put a 4-1 on the board. Let's see if we can do exactly that. This opener looks fine. I'm going to keep this. Bayou, Reclaimer, and then we can kind of see where the ground lies after that and what we want to be doing with the rest of our turns. We're on the draw as well, so we're going to see 2 additional cards before we make our second turn play. So things that can change how we play out our first turn is if we draw another fetch land, that might make us want to get the basics here, but we'll see. Alright, we're definitely on Boseiju, on Bayou here. So our opponent played a Cavern of Souls on Ape, which is unusual, but not unheard of course. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. I'm really hoping for our opponent to be playing Ape Tribal. I'm currently also watching through the Planet of the Apes movies, so this is prophetic. This makes me think my opponent is on the red-green initiative deck, because that runs Sim Spirit Guides, Once Upon a Time, so Microspawn. Okay, maybe they're just on Eldrazi and they just named Ape for some reason. Maybe they just had the soul read that we weren't playing a blue deck. We get Microspawn as early as this turn. Kozilek's Command for 1. Not the end of the world, but does set us back. A Verdant Catacombs. We could just play this Wight of the Reliquary. And that's going to be a pretty powerful game object moving forward, especially if we can start doing Springheart Nantuko stuff. So let's jam down the Knight, or the Wight, sorry, and pass it over. This is also a pretty good thing to wield as Shadowspear in this matchup. Just having a big Vigilance guy with lifelink is going to be tough for our opponent to get through. Now they can do it. Eldrazi hits pretty hard. It could go wide, it can go tall. I think we're going to see... We can't see the Microspawn because they named Ape off the Cavern of Souls. Okay, so they'd probably take the Springheart Nantuko. That's the best thing we've got going on in our hand, I would say. But we do get to follow up with Urza Saga, Shadowspear Equip, and that's reasonable. Alternatively, we can play the Dryad Arbor. That gives us something to sacrifice. So what is the text on this? When it leaves the battlefield. Okay, so if we can find a Fatal Push, we can play the Dryad Arbor, sack the Dryad Arbor, kind of do that whole jam. Okay. I do think we want to get this Urza Saga up and running. So that's step 1 here. And I think we want to get this Mox Diamond out. And then we can Life from the Loam back these 3. Play the Shadowspear. We can't equip it yet, but that's acceptable to me. And then we pass. So we're going to take a hit this turn. But then we get to start doing Urza Saga stuff. And if we can make some big constructs, stick the boots on them, stick the spears on them, and just be lots of big, hasty artifact damage. Now, if our opponent drops a Wasteland and takes out our Saga, that would be annoying. But they're not doing that. They now have the ability to play the Microspawn, and they can kick it as well to take out our Saga and get a Wasteland. We do have a Life from the Loam, so that's not a long-term strategy to deny us mana, but our opponent isn't trying to deny us mana in the long term, they're trying to do it in the short term and then get over the hump. So we're going to lose the Saga, and then they're also going to get a Wasteland, or they might get an Eye of Ugin, so they can start developing out that way. Okay, they're getting a Cradle. That's kind of concerning. You got more spells over there, opponent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this will give them the ability to cast the Null Drifter. So we could phase out one of their creatures next turn by sacrificing our Dryad Arbor. And that would give us the ability to not have to worry about a Null Drifter. But if they draw a land, then it kind of doesn't matter either way at that point. Okay, also the same Microspawn exiles. So that's not ideal for us either. Okay, the Wasteland is fine here. We can take out this Cradle. They obviously got it for a reason. So we can Wasteland this away. We don't get to make the Dryad Arbor now, which is awkward. I don't really want to trade my white for the same Microspawn, especially since next turn we can put a creature in the bin and it gets better. I think next turn we're dredging Life from the Loam. Start doing Wasteland Lock. There's an Eye of Ugin. Again, that's something I really want to hit with the Wasteland, but then that means we're further off doing our Dryad Arbor thing. Thought-Knot Seer is going to be a swing and a miss, I'm afraid, opponent. If we dredge over the Life from the Loam, we're more likely to hit another creature to pump our white as well. So we're going to take 7 this turn, which is a lot. Our opponent can't activate this Eye of Ugin, so this is the turn for us to try and make a big enough guy to rumble. So I think we are doing Life from the Loam this turn. Can we dredge over a creature? No. Okay. Play this out for 4. Is there a way that we can put another creature into our bin? We could Surveil, maybe. No, the Underground Mortuary is gone. If we attack with the Wight of the Reliquary, tapping out isn't the most helpful thing here, is it? I think we just go and get these 2 things out of our graveyard. So if they attack, we can block with the Dryad Arbor and then block with the Wight of the Reliquary on the same Microspawn. If they just attack with the 2 Thought-Knot Seers, that becomes a little bit more awkward for us. If they have a spell, then that's obviously going to be a pain for us. And there's only so much we can do. We can take our opponent off green next turn, or we can take them off of Eye of Ugin. Looks like they got a spell. Kozilek's Command. That's such a pain. So if we... Yeah, we have to... If we sack this, it can't sack itself. So if we So if we block here, we die. If we get Talon Gates of Madara and phase this out, then we can't block and we're just dead. Yep, that was just a really good draw from our opponent there. We were one turn away from being stable that entire game, but we just never were. I like dismembers here. Haywire Mite is interesting because our opponent can play some annoying stuff that maybe we want to be trying to deal with. Thoughtseize on the play is reasonable, but I think we're just better off with the tools we have here. The land shell feels pretty good into Eldrazi in my experience. Do I want Endurance just as another fat body? I don't think so. It's a case of how much of this stuff do we want. They've got that annoying thing that bounces, that blows up artifacts, so I definitely don't want to have a heavy Mox Diamond draw. So maybe we just have a couple of dismembers instead of Mox Diamonds. And if I want this Haywire Mite, where does that come in? Probably the Bojuka Bog, because our opponent is not a graveyard deck. Alright, I do think we're actually fine in this matchup, looking at what the tools we have, more or less. We got some removal. Seems acceptable. We can try and finally do the Vinelasher Nantuko plan. And just make more Vinelashes. Alright, they got the Devourer of Destiny to kick things off. Alright, let's play a Vinelasher. Next turn we can Wasteland plus Fatal Push, or we can bestow the Nantuko. Those are the two things I'm most interested in doing. Our opponent tends not to run like turn 1 plays that often in Eldrazi. That's not what Eldrazi decks are all about. Right, so there's no Wasteland here. So what are we doing? We do want to have a Wasteland in play anyway, so I will play this and then use this to bestow. Yep, we'll ping our opponent for 1. Let's make our creature slightly bigger and get 2 more damage in. An Eye of Ugin. So this is going to be like a Glaring Fleshraker, sure. They're unlikely to be able to follow up because none of these decks are running Mimics anymore. Okay, they've got a Lotus Petal. That does mean they get to make a follow-up here. Their Glaring Fleshraker is going to do a lot better work at pinging us than our Iridescent Vinelasher. But our Vinelasher only costs 1. So there is that. Alright, we're going to see another play here. Sowing Microspawn. How gross is this turn 2 already? Yikes. What are they going for? They're going for a Wasteland on our Wasteland. Microspawn getting a land untapped is also pretty gross too. A Cradle. Jeez Louise. Okay. Have they got more? They have more. They could do a kicked Microspawn here, right? Thought Not Seer. They take our Fatal Push, which is really irritating here. Because then they just get to have this Glaring Fleshraker do it all. I don't know how we're supposed to beat a draw like this. The reason why Eldrazi is one of the top decks in the format right now. It does have just these borderline unbeatable draws. Okay. Right, we're going to keep making Vinelashes here. Guess take the Cradle because it's 4 mana, although the Eye of Ugin can be more than 4 mana. What a horrible situation. Okay. We've got a plan. Right, that Yavimaya is basically a soul land because it turns the Eye of Ugin into a mana producing land. Alright, they've got another Lotus Petal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they're just going to play this Devourer of Destiny. Yeah. Are they going to hit our Springheart Nantuko? Or are they going to hit the Vinelasher? What are we supposed to do about this? Like, the upper end of these Eldrazi decks, what they can do is just so hard to do anything about. Okay, are we supposed to just try and Wasteland Fatal Push on turn 2? Into an empty board? If our opponent doesn't have the Lotus Petal, we're in an okay spot there, but they got rid of the... Yeah, they got rid of our Nantuko there. It doesn't even feel like we're playing the same format here, does it? Okay, we can Wasteland all of our opponent's lands away, but how are we beating what's in play? We chump block here. We take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We chump block here and here. We take 5 and die. So chump blocking doesn't work. We can't put this Talon Gates into play. Yeah, we're just stone cold dead. Yeah, our opponent just absolutely smashed us to pieces there. And unfortunately, we finish with a 3-2. That last round was incredibly brutal. And we just didn't quite get where we needed to be. Alright, let's talk about this deck. First things first, I enjoyed playing this deck. I think this deck is cool and it's doing some nice things. Is it better than regular Cradle control? Probably not. I do like that we have 4 actual removal spells, whereas Cradle control doesn't. What I don't like about those removal spells is they don't hit anything bigger. So if our opponent reanimates something, we're kind of in trouble. Because if it's got an attack trigger like an Arcane of Cruelty, then our Maze of Ith does nothing. Talon Gates obviously doesn't really do very much either. So we're kind of all in on hoping that it's like Atraxa, but then how are we ever beating through Atraxa, I guess? We're just doing Iridescent Vinelasher stuff. Is this the best deck for Iridescent Vinelasher? I do not believe so. I believe there is a better build to be made with this card. Is that build good enough for Legacy? That is a different question. But I think you can leverage this more if that's the thing you want to do. Now, we've seen how powerful things like Glaring Fleshraker are, where you get to like jam your opponent down. That obviously gives you additional mana, which is something that the Vinelasher doesn't. I also think if you're playing Vinelasher, you probably want to be playing Exploration over the Mox Diamond. Now, I understand the Mox Diamond allows us to jump the curve and play a Wight or an Nantuko or a Loam early. But if we've got these extra 1-drops in the form of Iridescent Vinelasher, we don't need to be doing that. So we could just run Explorations here. And that also gives us the ability to run some Collectors in the sideboard without worrying too much as well. So that would kind of be an interesting way to take this deck and try and improve it. I think I want some kind of hard removal spell somewhere in our 75. You know, whether it's like Go for the Throat, which is pretty good at the moment, that seems like one that I would be interested in having, because it kills Atraxa, it kills Archon, you know, it kills Psychic Frog too. It kind of hits all the things we want to hit. Doesn't hit Kappa Cannoneer, but what does, right? So that would be what I would consider. That also kills all the Eldrazi threats, so why not smash that in too? But yeah, I think making these explorations would go a long way to helping this deck. I also think, like, this is also, the explorations make the life in the Loam better. We certainly had turns where if we could have played 2 lands instead of having a Mox Diamond, we would have been in much better shape. Like, we could have been able to play our Wasteland and also our Dryad Arbor, which then sacks the White of the Reliquary and then pulls us ahead. And that would have won the game for us against the Eldrazi deck, whereas Mox Diamond just didn't. The Freestrider Lookout felt really cool. This card has impressed me quite a bunch. We get to do some pretty gross things with it when you start basically drawing an extra card every turn. But it's not any card. It's you get to Once Upon a Time for a land every turn. And that feels pretty gross. It's every turn, not necessarily every turn cycle. So I was a big fan of having that kicking around. And it makes a lot of sense with the Vinelasher. I do like this little combo, and you may be seeing something with this on my channel at a later date. Same with the Springheart Nantuko. Big fan of this one. Our land base meant that we can't really keep the hands that are just like Life from the Loam and stuff, because we kind of... Our game plan trying to Life from the Loam isn't as strong as like a Lands deck. We don't have Blast Zones defined. We don't have our Thespian Stage, Dark Depths combo defined. We don't have, you know, half as much stuff as the proper full-on lands build does, where it can just go, oh, we're just going to do some Life from the Loam and then we're going to kill you with this at some point. So maybe you could trim one of these Life from the Loams. Although Life from the Loam, if we're going into explorations, makes the Life from the Loam a lot better. So that's another thing to consider as well. We've got plenty of lands here. You know, we got, what, 28? Which is a pretty big stack of them. I think that's enough to run 3 to 4 explorations. We could have the Scrabbling Claws in the main, just to go with the Freestrider Lookout as like a nice self-contained package. We also had some hands where the Mox Diamond didn't have anything to pitch to it. Now, obviously, the same thing is going to happen if you have an exploration, so there is that consideration too. And the Mox Diamond does pump the Urza Saga, so it's not like it's a complete, yep, you definitely want that. But I think given the fact we have more 1-drops and this thing that wants us to be playing lands rather than artifacts, it makes sense to have the exploration. The question is, how much are you supposed to build around Iridescent Vinelasher? Well, an answer to that question is going to come in a future video that I'm working on, where we play lots of Iridescent Vinelasher and really go ham with it. So let's see how that one pans out for us. But in terms of this deck list, it seemed fine. I think you can definitely improve it and tweak it. Is it going to be as good as the other sort of black-green Elvish Reclaimer, White, the Reliquary style decks? I'm very skeptical on that. But there are definitely things that we can appreciate here, like the Fatal Pushes in the main and the Freestrider Lookout were both really nice tools. And I'm surprised you don't see more Freestrider Lookouts in, you know, these sort of fairish green-black style decks. Sideboard-wise, the main thing we're missing here is Collector Roof. I really feel we could do with that. We were pretty cold against the deck that was doing that, and that's just unfortunate for us. The last round against Eldrazi, I think our deck is relatively well set up in that matchup, but the high end of Eldrazi hands is going to beat us because their ceiling is higher than our ceiling. Like, they can kill you on turn 2. We don't really have anything of that sort of ballpark. And are we supposed to hold up Wasteland plus Fatal Push in case our opponent plays like something really, really gross on turn 2? Because they played like pretty much their whole hand on turn 2 after just having a waste on turn 1. Now, what would have happened if we had that? So we would go, they put the Glaring Fleshraker on a stack. We Wasteland away their Ivugin. Their Fleshraker resolves. They play a Lotus Petal. We kill their Fleshraker. then they're left with just a Lotus Petal for that turn. They don't get to play a bunch more stuff. That is a thing that we could have done. But then, surely, when your opponent doesn't do anything on turn 1 and they just play a land that taps for 1 mana that you can't interact with, surely the majority of the time it's going to be best for you to play like a Springheart Nantuko or whatever, or just get something in play. Because if you don't have something in play and you start attacking your opponent's resources, you're not really advancing your game, you're just stalling the game. And then eventually your opponent's going to make enough lands where they start playing their big haymakers, and it's all going to go wrong because you still got these things in your hand that you haven't deployed because, you know, they're going to be thought not searing away them or whatever, and that might be an awkward road to go down. If our opponent didn't have the Lotus Petal there, so they were just Fleshraker go, then we'd probably win that game. So they had to have quite a specific set of things to really pop off there, and, you know, they had those things and they absolutely ruined us. But that's the power of the Eldrazi deck, and I don't think I would play differently in the same situation, but it's something to consider. There's an argument around trying to lose the game less or trying to actually make sure you win the game, like playing to win versus playing not to lose. And I would rather get my tempo down, get my pressure down, and just make every single turn better from that point onwards, which is what we attempted to do, and it didn't work out for us. If our opponent played a non-basic land, we probably are more inclined to snap off that wasteland and see if we can cut them off from doing anything. But that isn't the case with what happened there. Alright, I think that's about it for the deck tech today. There's definitely some holes in what this deck can combat in terms of some of the combo matchups. But it's quite a fun one, and I think if you want to innovate with this, you certainly can. And remember to like and subscribe if you want to see the weird and wacky Iridescent Vinelasher build that I've got in the works for coming weeks. So, nice little plug for the channel as well. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.